There was not enough space for him. My mother said those words so casually, as if she was talking about a piece of furniture that did not fit in the corner of a room. She was not talking about furniture. She was talking about my son. My 7-year-old boy who was standing right there in her living room, staring at the enormous family tree hanging on the wall, desperately searching for his own face among all the others. 8 grandchildren smiled down from that wall. 8 photographs arranged in a beautiful wooden frame, connected by painted branches and leaves, with my parents' wedding photo at the top like a crown. My sister's 3 kids were there. My brother's 4 kids were there. And then there was a gap. A space where my son should have been. A space that remained empty. "But Grandma," my son whispered, his little voice breaking, "where am I?" My mother did not even look at him when she answered. "We will add you later, sweetheart." The frame was very expensive, and we did not want to wait any longer to hang it up. Later. That word had haunted my son for his entire life. Later we will take you to the park. Later we will read you that story. Later we will include you. Later, later, later. Later never came. I watched my son's face crumple. I watched him try so hard not to cry, because he was 7 years old now, and 7-year-olds are supposed to be big boys who do not cry over silly things like family trees. But this was not silly. This was his entire existence being erased from his grandparents' wall. I did not scream at my mother that day. I did not demand she take down the tree or add my son immediately. I simply took my boy's hand, led him out to the car, and drove home in silence while he sobbed quietly in the back seat. That night, after I tucked him into bed and kissed his forehead, I made a decision. My parents' 50th wedding anniversary was 2 months away. They were planning a huge party, inviting everyone they had ever known, celebrating half a century of marriage and family. They wanted to celebrate family? Fine. I would show them exactly what family meant to me. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Jennifer Dawson. I am 34 years old, and I have been married to my husband Michael for 9 years. We have 1 child, a beautiful boy named Ethan who just turned 7. He has his father's curly brown hair and my green eyes, and he has the kindest heart of anyone I have ever known. I grew up in a large family. I am the middle child of 3. My older sister Amanda is 38, and my younger brother Christopher is 31. We were raised in a comfortable suburban home by parents who seemed, from the outside, to be the perfect example of a loving family. My father, Robert, worked as an accountant for a large firm downtown. He was quiet and reserved, the kind of man who showed his love through actions rather than words. He coached my brother's little league team, helped me with my math homework, and drove my sister to dance recitals without ever complaining. My mother, Diane, was a homemaker who took her role very seriously. She baked cookies for school events, volunteered at the church, and kept our house spotless. She was the social butterfly of the family, always organizing gatherings and making sure everyone stayed connected. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. But every family has its secrets, its hierarchies, its unspoken rules about who matters most. I learned early on that I was not the favorite child. Amanda was the firstborn, the one who could do no wrong, the golden child who excelled at everything she tried. Christopher was the baby, the surprise blessing who arrived when my parents thought they were done having children, the little prince who was spoiled and adored. And I was Jennifer, the middle child. The one who was easy to overlook because she did not demand attention the way her siblings did. The one who got good grades and stayed out of trouble and never caused any problems, which somehow translated into not being noticed at all. I made peace with my position in the family hierarchy a long time ago. I told myself it did not matter, that my parents loved all their children equally even if they did not always show it. I built my own life, married a wonderful man, and had a son who became the center of my universe. When I was pregnant with Ethan, I swore to myself that I would never make him feel the way I had felt growing up. I would never let him wonder if he was loved. I would never let him feel invisible or overlooked or forgotten. He would know every single day of his life that he was wanted and cherished and absolutely perfect exactly as he was. And I kept that promise. Michael and I showered Ethan with love from the moment he was born. We read him stories every night, took him to the park every weekend, celebrated every milestone like it was the most important event in the world. Because to us, it was. But then I started noticing that the pattern was repeating itself with Ethan. Not in our house, where he was the center of everything, but in my parents' house, where he was becoming the same kind of invisible that I had once been. It started when he was a baby. My parents would visit and spend hours cooing over Amanda's children, taking hundreds of photographs, buying them expensive gifts. When it came to Ethan, they would hold him for a few minutes, take 1 or 2 pictures, and then hand him back to me like he was an obligation rather than a joy. When Ethan was 2, my parents took Amanda's oldest daughter to Disney World for her birthday. It was a 5-day trip, all expenses paid, just the 3 of them creating magical memories together. When Ethan turned 2 a few months later, they sent a card with a $20 bill inside. When Ethan was 3, my parents started a tradition of weekend sleepovers with the grandchildren. Every Saturday night, one grandchild would stay at their house for special one-on-one time with Grandma and Grandpa. Amanda's 3 kids rotated through regularly. Christopher's 4 kids had their turns. Ethan was invited once, and my mother called me after just 3 hours to come pick him up because he was too fussy. He was not fussy. He was 3 years old and missed his parents. But apparently, that was unacceptable behavior that none of the other grandchildren had ever displayed. When Ethan was 4, my parents threw a huge birthday party for Christopher's twins, who were turning 6. They rented out a party venue, hired a clown, ordered a massive cake, and invited over 50 people. When Ethan turned 4, my mother said she was too tired to host a party, but maybe we could do a small dinner sometime. The small dinner never happened. When Ethan was 5, my parents announced they were starting college funds for all their grandchildren. They made a big show of it at Thanksgiving, presenting each grandchild with a certificate showing that $5,000 had been deposited in their name. Ethan did not receive a certificate. When I asked about it later, my mother said they had run out of money and would add Ethan's fund next year. Next year came and went. No fund was ever created for my son. When Ethan was 6, my parents remodeled their house and created a special playroom for the grandchildren. It was beautiful, filled with toys and games and art supplies. There were personalized storage bins for each grandchild, their names painted in colorful letters. Amanda's kids had bins. Christopher's kids had bins. Ethan did not have a bin. "We just forgot," my mother said when I pointed it out. "I will get one made for him soon." She never did. I kept telling myself that I was being oversensitive, that I was projecting my own childhood insecurities onto my son, that my parents really did love Ethan and just had trouble showing it. I made excuses for them the same way I had made excuses for my own treatment as a child. But deep down, I knew the truth. My parents saw Ethan as less than. Less important, less worthy, less deserving of their time and attention and love. And I had no idea why. Michael noticed it too. My husband is a patient man, not quick to judge or criticize, but even he could see the disparity in how my parents treated our son compared to the other grandchildren. "Have you talked to them about it?" he asked me one night after a particularly painful family gathering where Ethan had been ignored for 3 straight hours. "I have tried. They always have an excuse. They say I am imagining things, that they love all their grandchildren equally, that Ethan is just more independent and does not need as much attention." That is ridiculous. He is 7 years old. He needs attention just like any other kid. I know. But what am I supposed to do? Force them to love him? Michael was quiet for a moment. "No. But maybe you need to stop putting Ethan in situations where he feels unloved. Maybe we need to create some distance." I knew he was right. But creating distance from my own parents felt like admitting defeat. It felt like accepting that my son would never have the relationship with his grandparents that his cousins had. It felt like giving up. So I kept trying. I kept bringing Ethan to family gatherings, hoping that this time would be different. I kept accepting invitations and making excuses and pretending everything was fine. And then came the family tree. My mother had been talking about creating a family tree for years. She was obsessed with genealogy, spending hours on ancestry websites, tracing our family back generations. She talked about how important it was to know where you came from, to understand your roots, to celebrate the family that made you who you are. When she finally announced that she was having a professional family tree created, I was actually excited. I thought this would be something that would bring the whole family together. I thought Ethan would finally see himself represented as part of something bigger, something permanent. My mother worked on the project for months. She collected photographs, researched dates, consulted with a designer. She was secretive about the details, wanting it to be a surprise for everyone when it was finally unveiled. The unveiling happened on a random Sunday in March. My mother invited the whole family over for brunch and then led us all into the living room where a large cloth was draped over something on the wall. "I have been working on this for almost a year," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "It is finally finished. I present to you the Dawson family tree." She pulled back the cloth with a flourish, and everyone gasped. It was beautiful. There was no denying that. The tree was mounted in an ornate wooden frame, at least 4 feet wide and 3 feet tall. The trunk rose from the bottom of the frame, branching out into limbs that held photographs of family members going back 4 generations. My great-grandparents were at the roots. My grandparents were on the lower branches. My parents' wedding photo sat prominently in the center. And spreading out from there were my siblings, their spouses, and all the grandchildren. Everyone started pointing and exclaiming, finding their own photographs, admiring the craftsmanship. I stood back, scanning the tree, looking for Ethan's face. I could not find it. I looked again, more carefully this time. I found Amanda's 3 children, their faces beaming from matching frames on one branch. I found Christopher's 4 children, arranged in a neat row on another branch. I counted 8 grandchildren total. But there were only 7 photographs in the grandchildren section. My heart started pounding. I counted again. Amanda's kids: Olivia, 12. Noah, 10. Lily, 7. Christopher's kids: the twins Jackson and Mason, 9. Emma, 6. Baby Lucas, 3. 7 children. 7 photographs. Ethan was not there. I felt the blood drain from my face. I looked at my son, who was standing on his tiptoes, searching the tree with the same desperate energy I had felt moments ago. "Mommy, where am I?" he asked, his voice small and confused. My mother was across the room, accepting compliments from Amanda and Christopher, basking in the praise for her beautiful creation. She did not hear Ethan's question. Or maybe she did hear it and chose to ignore it. I walked over to her, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. "Mom, where is Ethan's photograph?" She looked at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt, embarrassment. It was gone before I could identify it. "Oh, there was not enough space," she said, waving her hand dismissively. The designer said adding another photograph would throw off the balance of the whole piece. "We will add him later when we get a bigger frame." There was not enough space for my son on the family tree? "Jennifer, do not make a scene. It is just a decoration. Ethan knows he is part of the family." But Ethan was standing right behind me, and he had heard every word. I turned to see his little face, and what I saw there broke my heart into a million pieces. He was not crying. He was past crying. He was just staring at the tree with an expression of profound resignation, like a child who has finally accepted that he will never be good enough. "It is okay, Mommy," he said quietly. "I do not need to be on the wall." I knelt down and pulled him into my arms, holding him tight while my mother went back to entertaining her guests. Over Ethan's shoulder, I could see Amanda and Christopher glancing at me with expressions that ranged from pity to annoyance. Nobody spoke up. Nobody said that it was wrong to exclude a child from the family tree. Nobody demanded that my mother fix her mistake. Because in this family, I realized, it was not considered a mistake at all. We left shortly after that. I made some excuse about Ethan not feeling well, which was technically true even if the illness was emotional rather than physical. My mother barely acknowledged our departure, too busy showing off her masterpiece to the remaining guests. The drive home was silent. Michael was at work, so it was just me and Ethan in the car, both of us processing what had happened in our own ways. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, watching my son. He was staring out the window, his little face pressed against the glass, watching the houses and trees blur past. He was not crying, and somehow that was worse. Tears would have been a normal reaction. This silent resignation was something else entirely. "Ethan, sweetheart, are you okay?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. He did not respond for a long moment. Then, in a voice so quiet I could barely hear it, he said, "Mommy, am I a real grandson?" My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I had to grip the steering wheel to keep from pulling over and breaking down completely. "Of course you are, baby. You are the most real grandson in the whole world." Then why was I not on the tree? All my cousins were there. Even baby Lucas was there, and he cannot even walk yet. But I was not there. I did not have an answer. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that his grandparents have chosen not to love him the way they love his cousins? How do you tell him that there is nothing wrong with him, that the problem is with the adults who should know better? "I do not know, sweetheart," I said honestly. "I do not know why Grandma did that. But I want you to know something. Are you listening?" "Yes, Mommy." "You are perfect exactly as you are. You are smart and kind and funny and wonderful. And you belong in our family, the one we have at home. Daddy and I love you more than anything in the whole universe. Do you understand?" "I understand," he said. But I could hear the doubt in his voice. The damage had been done, and no amount of reassurance from me could undo it completely. When we got home, Ethan went straight to his room and closed the door. I stood in the hallway for a long moment, listening to the silence, wondering what my little boy was doing in there. Probably sitting on his bed, staring at the wall, trying to understand why his grandparents did not want him on their family tree. I pressed my ear against his door and heard something that made my blood run cold. He was talking to himself, in that quiet way children do when they think no one can hear. "Maybe if I was better," he was saying. "Maybe if I did not talk so much. Maybe if I was more like Noah. Noah is on the tree. Noah is a good grandson." I wanted to burst through that door and hold him and tell him that he was already good enough, that he had always been good enough, that nothing he could do or be would make him deserve this treatment. But I knew that entering his private moment would embarrass him. So I stayed in the hallway, listening to my son blame himself for his grandparents' cruelty, and I felt something harden in my heart. This was never going to happen again. I was going to make sure of it. I wanted to go to him, to hold him, to promise him that everything would be okay. But I did not know if that promise would be true. How could everything be okay when his own grandparents had made him feel like he did not exist? That night, after Ethan finally fell asleep, I sat at my kitchen table and cried. I cried for my son, for all the rejections he had suffered, for all the ways he had been made to feel less than. I cried for myself, for the little girl who had also felt invisible in this family, for the woman who had hoped her child would have a different experience. And then I stopped crying and started planning. My parents' 50th wedding anniversary was 2 months away. May 15th. They had been planning the party for over a year, renting out the ballroom of a fancy hotel, inviting over 200 guests. This was going to be the event of their lives, a celebration of their love and their family and everything they had built together. If they wanted to celebrate family, I would give them something to celebrate. I started my research the next day. I found a professional designer who specialized in custom family trees, the same kind of ornate, museum-quality pieces that my mother had commissioned. I explained what I wanted, a family tree featuring me, Michael, and Ethan. Just the three of us. Our own little family, complete and perfect and whole. The designer was confused at first. Most people who commissioned family trees wanted to include as many relatives as possible. Why would I want such a small one? Because my son needs to see that he belongs somewhere, I told her. He needs to see that he is part of a family that loves him and chooses him and will never leave him out. She understood. She got to work immediately. Over the next 2 months, I poured myself into this project. I collected the best photographs of our little family. Our wedding day. The day Ethan was born. His first steps, his first birthday, his first day of school. Family vacations and lazy Sundays and random moments of joy captured forever on camera. The designer arranged them beautifully. Our wedding photo was at the base of the tree, the roots from which everything grew. Michael and I were on the main branches, strong and stable. And Ethan was at the very top, surrounded by leaves and flowers, the crown of our family tree. It was stunning. It was meaningful. And it was going to send a message that my parents would never forget. While I worked on the family tree, I also started documenting. Just like I had seen other mothers do in similar situations, I began keeping records of every instance of favoritism, every moment of exclusion, every way my parents treated Ethan differently from the other grandchildren. I saved text messages where my mother declined to babysit Ethan but agreed to watch Christopher's kids the very next day. I took photographs of the playroom with the missing storage bin, the family tree with the missing photograph, the refrigerator covered in artwork from every grandchild except mine. I noted dates and times and specific quotes, building a case that nobody could deny. I did not know exactly how I would use this documentation. Part of me hoped I would never need to. Part of me hoped that my gift at the anniversary party would be enough to open my parents' eyes, to make them see what they had been doing, to inspire them to change. But another part of me knew that change would not come easily. People who have spent years treating a child as less than do not suddenly wake up and become loving grandparents. They need to be confronted with the truth. They need to see the evidence of their behavior laid out in front of them. And they need to face consequences. The weeks leading up to the anniversary party were tense. I continued attending family gatherings, continued smiling and nodding, continued pretending everything was fine. My parents had no idea what was coming. They were too busy planning their celebration, too excited about being the center of attention, too confident that their perfect family would perform perfectly on their special day. Michael knew about my plan. He was supportive but cautious. "Are you sure you want to do this?" he asked me one night as we lay in bed. "Once you give them that gift in front of everyone, there is no going back. Your relationship with your parents might never recover." "What relationship?" I replied. "They do not treat me or Ethan like family anyway. At least this way, Ethan will know that his parents fought for him. He will know that he matters." Michael was quiet for a moment. Then he squeezed my hand. "Okay. Then we do it together." The day of the anniversary party arrived. I dressed carefully, choosing an elegant navy dress that made me feel confident and strong. I helped Ethan into his little suit and tie, smoothing down his curly hair and telling him how handsome he looked. "Mommy, why are we bringing a present for Grandma and Grandpa?" he asked as I loaded the carefully wrapped family tree into the car. "Because it is their special day, sweetheart. And I have a very special gift that I want them to see." "Is it the picture you have been working on? The one you would not let me see?" I smiled. "Yes, baby. And you are going to love it. I promise." The hotel ballroom was decorated lavishly. My parents had spared no expense. There were flower arrangements on every table, a live band playing soft jazz, a champagne tower sparkling in the corner. Over 200 guests mingled and chatted, all dressed in their finest, all there to celebrate Robert and Diane Dawson's 50 years of marriage. My parents stood near the entrance, greeting guests like royalty receiving subjects. My mother was wearing a cream-colored gown that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. My father was in a classic black tuxedo, looking uncomfortable but proud. When they saw us approach, my mother's smile flickered just slightly. She still had not forgiven me for making a scene about the family tree 2 months ago. But she was too aware of the watching guests to let her displeasure show. "Jennifer, Michael, so glad you could make it. And Ethan, do not you look nice?" Ethan mumbled a greeting and immediately went to find his cousins, who were clustered near the dessert table. I watched him go, my heart aching at how hard he was trying to fit in with children who had been taught, consciously or not, that he was not quite one of them. "What is that?" my mother asked, eyeing the large wrapped package I was carrying. "Your anniversary gift. I wanted to give it to you during the speech time, if that is okay. It is something I have been working on for a while." My mother looked suspicious but nodded. "Fine. We will have the speeches after dinner. You can present it then." Dinner was interminable. I pushed food around my plate, too nervous to eat, mentally rehearsing what I was going to say. Michael sat beside me, steady and supportive, his hand finding mine under the table whenever I started to doubt myself. The food was excellent, of course. My parents had hired a top catering company, and the menu was elaborate. Prime rib, lobster tail, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. But everything tasted like cardboard to me. My stomach was in knots, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. At the next table, I could hear Amanda's kids laughing and talking, comfortable and confident in their place in the family. They were dressed in matching outfits, clearly coordinated by my mother, who had probably spent weeks planning every detail of this event. Christopher's kids were equally well dressed, equally at ease. Ethan sat at the far end of the children's table, eating quietly, not participating in the conversation. His cousins were not being mean to him. Not exactly. They were just ignoring him, the way you ignore a piece of furniture you see so often you forget it is there. He had learned long ago that his cousins were not interested in anything he had to say, that any attempt to join their conversations would be met with polite disinterest at best. I watched him take small bites of his food, chewing mechanically, his eyes fixed on his plate. Every few minutes, he would glance up at his cousins, watching their animated conversation, their easy laughter. And then he would look back down at his plate, excluded from yet another family moment. My resolve hardened. This was exactly why I was doing what I was about to do. Finally, the speeches began. Amanda went first, delivering a polished tribute to our parents that had clearly been written by a professional. She talked about their unwavering love, their dedication to family, their example of what marriage should be. She did not mention that their unwavering love seemed to skip over certain family members. Christopher went next, making jokes and telling stories from his childhood as the baby of the family. He talked about how our parents had always supported him, always believed in him, always made him feel special. I wondered if he had ever noticed that I did not have the same experience. And then it was my turn. I stood up, my legs shaky, and walked to the microphone at the front of the room. I was carrying the wrapped family tree, holding it carefully against my chest like a shield. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice only trembling slightly. For those who do not know me, I am Jennifer, the middle child. The one people sometimes forget about at family gatherings. There was uncomfortable laughter. I pressed on. 50 years of marriage is an incredible accomplishment. It represents decades of commitment, sacrifice, and love. And tonight, I want to give my parents a gift that celebrates what family really means. I set the package on a nearby table and began unwrapping it. The room was silent, everyone watching, waiting. The family tree was revealed. There were murmurs of appreciation from the crowd who could not yet see the details. "This is a family tree," I said. "My family tree. The one that hangs on my wall at home." I turned it around so everyone could see. There was our wedding photo at the base. There were pictures of me and Michael on the branches. And there, at the very top, was Ethan, surrounded by photos from every important moment of his life. Some of you may know that my mother recently created a family tree of her own. It is a beautiful piece, hanging in her living room. It features 4 generations of our family, including all 8 of her grandchildren. I paused. Correction. It features 7 of her 8 grandchildren. My son Ethan was not included. There was not enough space. The murmurs grew louder. People were looking at each other, confused, trying to understand what was happening. "I want to talk about space," I continued. "About the space we make for people in our lives. About the space we create or deny." I looked directly at my parents. My mother's face had gone white. My father was staring at the floor. For 7 years, my son has been denied space in this family. He was not given space on the family tree. He does not have space in the grandchildren's playroom. He does not have space at the sleepover rotation. He does not have space in the college fund. He does not have space in the birthday party planning or the holiday photos or the everyday moments that make a child feel loved and valued. "Jennifer," my mother hissed, "this is not appropriate." "What is not appropriate, Mother, is making a 7-year-old boy feel like he does not exist. What is not appropriate is showing him a wall of family photographs that he is not a part of. What is not appropriate is looking into my son's eyes and telling him there was not enough space for him." I held up the family tree, the one I had made. "This is my gift to you tonight. A reminder of what family should be. A family tree where every member has a place. A family tree where no child is left out. A family tree where love is not rationed based on who your parents are or where you fall in the birth order." I set the tree down on the table in front of my parents. "Ethan will always have space in my family. He will always belong. He will always matter. I cannot control whether he has space in yours, but I can make sure he knows that being excluded from your wall does not mean he is excluded from love." I turned to face the crowd one more time. Family is not just about blood. It is about showing up. It is about making room. It is about choosing each other again and again, even when it is difficult. My parents have been married for 50 years, and I hope they have learned something about love in that time. I hope they can learn to make space for all their grandchildren. Not later. Not when it is convenient. Now. I walked away from the microphone and went to find my son. The rest of the party was chaos. I did not stay to witness most of it. I found Ethan at the dessert table, grabbed his hand, and walked out of the ballroom with Michael following close behind. We were halfway to the car when I heard footsteps behind us. I turned to see my father, his face red and his eyes glistening. "Jennifer, wait." I stopped but did not turn around. "What you said in there about Ethan," he paused, his voice cracking. "I did not know. I did not realize. Your mother handles all the grandchildren things, and I never paid attention." "That is the problem, Dad. Nobody paid attention. And my son suffered for it. I am sorry." The words came out broken, painful. "I am so sorry. I do not know how to fix this, but I want to try. I want to know my grandson. Really know him." I finally turned to look at him. This man who had coached my brother's teams but never came to my choir concerts. This man who had been physically present but emotionally absent for most of my life. This man who was now, perhaps for the first time, seeing what his neglect had cost. "That is not up to me, Dad. That is up to Ethan. You will have to earn his trust, just like you will have to earn mine." I took my son's hand and continued walking to the car. We drove home in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than the one after the family tree incident. This silence felt like relief, like exhaling after holding your breath for years. "Mommy." Ethan's voice came from the back seat. "Yes, sweetheart. That picture you showed everyone, the one with me at the top. Is that really on our wall?" I smiled, tears streaming down my face. "Not yet, baby. But it will be tomorrow. First thing in the morning, we are going to hang it right in our living room, where everyone can see it. So people will know I belong?" "Everyone already knows you belong, Ethan. Now you will too." The weeks following the anniversary party were complicated. My mother did not speak to me for almost a month. Amanda sent me a long email about how I had embarrassed the family and ruined our parents' special day. Christopher called to say he understood why I did it, but wished I had chosen a different approach. The hardest part was watching Ethan try to make sense of everything. He knew something big had happened at the party, but he did not fully understand what or why. He asked me questions that I struggled to answer. "Mommy, is Grandma mad at you because of what you said? Mommy, did I do something wrong? Mommy, will we ever see Grandma again?" Each question broke my heart a little more. My son was 7 years old, and he was already learning that speaking up for yourself could have consequences. He was already absorbing the lesson that being truthful might cost you relationships. I did not want him to learn that lesson yet, but life does not always wait until we are ready. I tried to explain things in ways he could understand. I told him that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and when someone points out those mistakes, it can make them upset. I told him that Grandma was not mad at him, just at me, and that was okay because I was a grown-up and could handle it. I told him that we would give Grandma some time, and hopefully she would come around. "But what if she does not come around?" he asked, his eyes wide with worry. "Then we will still be okay," I said, pulling him close. "Because our family, the one that lives in this house, will always love each other. No matter what happens with Grandma and Grandpa, you will always have me and Daddy. Always." He seemed to accept this, at least for the moment. But I could see the wheels turning in his little head, processing and analyzing and trying to figure out his place in this complicated web of family relationships. The first week after the party, I received dozens of phone calls and text messages. Some were supportive, congratulating me for finally saying what everyone had been thinking. Some were critical, accusing me of making a private family matter into a public spectacle. And some were somewhere in between, acknowledging that I had a point but questioning my methods. I did not respond to most of them. I was too exhausted, too emotionally drained, too focused on making sure Ethan was okay. The outside opinions could wait. My son could not. But something unexpected also happened. Other family members started reaching out. Aunts and uncles and cousins who had witnessed my speech and been moved by it. They apologized for not noticing sooner, for not speaking up, for being complicit in Ethan's exclusion through their silence. And then there was my father. True to his word, he started making an effort. He called Ethan every Sunday afternoon to chat about his week. These calls started awkwardly, with long silences and stilted conversation. My father had spent so little time with Ethan over the years that they were essentially strangers who happened to share DNA. But slowly, things got better. My father started asking about Ethan's interests, really listening when he talked about his favorite video games or the book he was reading or the science experiment they did at school. He remembered details from one conversation to the next, following up on things Ethan had mentioned before. For maybe the first time in his life, my father was being present and engaged with one of his grandchildren. He came to Ethan's soccer games, sitting in the bleachers and cheering louder than anyone else. The first time he showed up, Ethan kept looking over at the stands with a mixture of disbelief and joy on his face. He played the best game of his season, scoring 2 goals and assisting on a third. After the game, he ran to my father and threw his arms around him. "You came, Grandpa. You really came. Of course I came, my father said, his voice thick with emotion. I would not miss it for the world. He took Ethan fishing, just the two of them, and came back with photos and stories and a bond that had never existed before. They caught 3 bass and a catfish, and Ethan talked about it for weeks. He started calling his grandfather fishing buddy and made plans for their next trip before the first one was even over. My father also started doing something he had never done for me. He asked questions about Ethan's life, about his hopes and dreams and fears. He wanted to know what made his grandson happy, what worried him, what he wanted to be when he grew up. These were conversations that went beyond surface-level pleasantries, and they made Ethan feel seen in a way he never had before with that side of the family. It was not perfect. My father was learning how to be a grandfather at 72 years old, and he made plenty of mistakes along the way. Sometimes he forgot things Ethan had told him. Sometimes he said the wrong thing or made insensitive comments without realizing it. But he was trying. He was showing up. He was making space. My mother was a different story. She remained cold and distant for months, convinced that I had humiliated her in front of everyone she knew. She complained to Amanda that I had always been difficult, always looking for reasons to be upset, always making everything about myself. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, she began to change too. Maybe it was the pressure from other family members who had been affected by my speech. Maybe it was seeing my father develop a relationship with Ethan and not wanting to be left out. Maybe it was simply the passage of time, softening the sharp edges of her anger. 6 months after the anniversary party, my mother called and asked if she could take Ethan to the zoo. Just the two of them. No other grandchildren, no distractions, no one else competing for attention. I was suspicious. I asked Ethan if he wanted to go, making clear that he could say no if he did not feel comfortable. He thought about it for a long moment and then nodded. I want to see if she is different now, Mommy. Like Grandpa. So I let him go. And when he came home that evening, he was carrying a stuffed giraffe that my mother had bought him and a smile that I had not seen on his face in years. Grandma said I am her favorite zoo buddy, he told me, hugging the giraffe tight. She said she wants to take me again next month. I hugged him back, my heart full of emotions I could not name. Relief, hope, cautious optimism, and something that felt almost like forgiveness. A year after my speech at the anniversary party, my mother called with an unexpected request. I want to have a new family tree made, she said. A real one, with all the grandchildren. With Ethan in his rightful place. I was silent for a long moment, unsure how to respond. I know I cannot undo what I did, she continued, her voice smaller than I had ever heard it. I know I hurt Ethan, and I hurt you. I told myself for so long that I treated all my grandchildren the same, but you were right. I did not. And I do not have a good excuse for why. Then why, Mom? Why did you treat Ethan differently? She was quiet for so long I thought she had hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with tears. You were always so independent, Jennifer. From the time you were little, you did not need me the way Amanda and Christopher did. You figured things out on your own. You did not ask for help. You just handled everything yourself. I think I convinced myself that you and your family did not need me the way the others did. That you were fine on your own. I needed you, Mom. And Ethan needed you. We just learned not to ask because asking always ended in disappointment. I know that now. And I am sorry. I am so sorry. This was the apology I had waited my whole life to hear. The acknowledgement that I had not imagined things, that I had not been too sensitive, that my pain was real and valid. For a moment, I let myself feel the weight of those words, let them sink into all the places that had been bruised and battered by decades of feeling overlooked. What do you want me to say, Mom? I do not want you to say anything. I just want a chance to do better. To be the grandmother Ethan deserves. To be the mother you deserved all along. I thought about Ethan, about the little boy who had searched for his face on a wall and found nothing. I thought about the changes I had seen over the past year, the genuine effort my parents had made to include him, the relationship that was slowly building where there had been nothing before. I thought about forgiveness and what it meant, and whether it was possible to forgive someone who had hurt your child. Okay, Mom, make the new family tree. And make sure Ethan is right in the center. The new family tree hangs in my parents' living room now. It is even bigger and more beautiful than the original, with space for all 8 grandchildren and room to grow as the family expands. Ethan's photograph is prominently displayed, right next to his cousins, exactly where he belongs. But the family tree that matters most to me is still the one I made. The one with just the 3 of us, me and Michael and Ethan, our little family complete and whole. It hangs in our living room, the first thing you see when you walk through the door. Ethan is 9 now. He is thriving in school, has a group of close friends, and still loves to spend time with his grandma and grandpa. The wounds of his early childhood have not fully healed, and maybe they never will. But they are fading, slowly being covered over by new memories, better memories, memories of being loved and included and valued. I asked him recently if he remembered the day he could not find his photograph on Grandma's family tree. He thought about it for a moment and then nodded. I remember feeling really sad. Like maybe I was not really part of the family. And how do you feel now? He looked at me with those beautiful green eyes, so full of wisdom for such a young child. I know I am part of the family now, Mommy, but the family tree that matters most is the one you made. Because you made sure I was there. You made sure I had a place. I pulled him into my arms and held him tight, this child who had taught me so much about love and courage and standing up for what matters. You will always have a place, Ethan. Always. No matter what. That is the promise I made to my son the day he was born. And it is a promise I will keep until my last breath. Being a mother means fighting for your child, even when the battle is against people you love. It means standing up when everyone else wants you to sit down and be quiet. It means creating space where space has been denied, building family where family has failed, choosing love over peace when peace comes at the cost of your child's well-being. I do not regret what I did at my parents' anniversary party. Yes, it was dramatic. Yes, it created conflict. Yes, it changed my relationship with my parents forever. But it also changed my son's life. It showed him that he matters, that his feelings are valid, that his mother will always fight for him no matter the cost. And it opened the door to healing that would never have happened otherwise. My parents were forced to confront their behavior, to face the truth about how they had treated their grandson. Some people might have doubled down, become defensive, cut me off entirely. But my parents, for all their flaws, chose a different path. They chose to change. Not everyone is capable of change. Not every story ends with reconciliation. I know mothers who have had to cut off their parents entirely to protect their children, who have had to build new families from scratch because the ones they were born into were too toxic to salvage. Those mothers are heroes too. Protecting your child sometimes means walking away, even from people you love. But for my family, change was possible. It was slow and imperfect and sometimes painful, but it was real. And that gives me hope for other families who might be struggling with similar dynamics. If you recognize your own story and mine, I want you to know that you are not alone. That the patterns you are seeing are real, not imagined. That your child's pain is valid, and so is yours. And that you have the power to change things, even when change seems impossible. Document everything. Build your case. And when the time is right, speak your truth. Not out of anger or revenge, but out of love for your child and hope for something better. Your child is watching. Your child is learning. Your child needs to know that they have someone in their corner, someone who will fight for them, someone who will make sure they always have a place. Be that someone. Last month, Ethan came home from school with an assignment. He was supposed to create a family tree showing his relatives, going back as many generations as he could. "Can you help me, Mommy?" he asked, spreading out the large poster board on the kitchen table. We worked on it together for hours. We included his great-grandparents, his grandparents, his aunts and uncles and cousins. We found old photographs and printed new ones, arranging them carefully on the branches of his tree. When we were done, Ethan stepped back and looked at his creation with pride. "Mommy, look. I am right here, in the middle of everyone. I belong." I hugged him, tears in my eyes. "Yes, baby. You belong. You have always belonged." And he finally, truly believes it. Thank you for listening to my journey of discovering what motherhood truly means. I have left 2 more stories on your screen, each for mothers who learned that protecting a child can mean standing alone against those once called family. Choose the one that speaks to you. And if you want to join a community of parents who fight for their children, that notification bell is waiting. Until tomorrow, remember, blood connects us, but a mother's love protects us.